Good evening, everybody. Nice to be with you. And so just a reminder to all the Europeans, people outside the United States, to keep checking the time zone math, because I know different countries are changing the time. But we've all had a time change. We're going to continue having a time change. So do the math so we can all be here. So thank you. Thanks for your patience with me. I apologize. Sometimes when I walk into this room, my mind goes blank and I lose my words. So anyways, so good to be here with you. So good to be here. So throughout the spiritual path, many of us show up to the path because we do not want to suffer anymore. We don't want to suffer. We've struggled so much in this world, and there's just something within us that says there's got to be another way to live. And the Buddha had this teaching, this great teaching, which is about how to be free from suffering. How to be free from suffering. But the confusion here that most of us have on the path is this discernment around what is pain, what is psychological suffering, and what is just a good, healthy struggle. Now, anything in life that you love, that you adore, that you commit yourself to, you're going to struggle with that thing. You're going to suffer because of that thing to some degree. But it's through that suffering, through that struggle, that your life will have great, great meaning. Great meaning. Now, many of us, we have this, we read this thing from the Buddha that it's possible to live a life free of suffering. And hardwired into our ego is this childlike desire to live in a way where we never experience pain again, where we don't suffer at all. But life is full of suffering. And there's good, healthy suffering, which is in alignment with the evolutionary nature of life, the evolutionary nature of God. And then there's foolish suffering, unnecessary suffering, where we waste years and years of our life fighting against something that we shouldn't fight against. Fighting against something that will just cause us pain. Now, like in a funny way, like I live in a place that snows. And for many years, because I've spent so much time fighting with snow, like snow will come to my town and sometimes it'll snow 4 feet and it'll crush things. It destroys your house, it destroys your roof. It can, if you imagine just going outside and your car is covered in 4 feet of snow, there's going to be some level of suffering there. There's going to be some level of struggle against that there. Now, I can psychologically suffer if I sit inside my warm house and it's snowing, this beautiful white snow outside. And if I begin to judge the snow, hate the snow, get angry at the snow, wish it wasn't here, why God made this thing called snow. Damn it, this is a stupid idea. Who would make snow? In my world, I would never make snow. It's like, I can create this whole unnecessary world of suffering. A whole unnecessary world of suffering. Where I create my own psychological suffering. Now, in a funny way, I'm going to use the word struggle now, because I love the mountains. And to live in the mountains requires some level of struggle, some level of fight. And this fight and this struggle, it makes one strong. It makes one strong. You know, my wife, like one time I was speaking with her, and sometimes we'll go back to where she's from, like the San Francisco area, and in California, it's just in this. I'm going to be kind of rude here, but in the city, there's a lot of men who are soft. You know, they're putting like gel in their hair, and they look all sharp, and they don't have they're all shaved up, and they wear fancy clothes, and their shoes look like they've never stepped in dirt before. And you know, sometimes I see these men, they're, you know, really handsome fellas, and they're all slick, and they look good, and they wear the tight shirts and all that kind of thing. And I asked my wife, I'm like, would you rather have one of those guys? And she says, no. She said, no, they're just boys. I'm like, what do you mean they're boys? Like, those are adults. They probably work at a bank. They make lots of money, you know, or work at some big corporation, and they drive a fancy car. And she said, no, like, I like a mountain man. A mountain man. And like, there's something about a mountain man. It's like he has to go out and fight for his place, for his seat at the table. Like, to live in the mountains, it's not an easy life. It's not an easy life. You know, oftentimes, like if you live in the mountains, you might have to chop your own firewood. You might have to know how to work a chainsaw. You might have to, you know, be able to get up on the ladder and fix the roof or shovel the roof if the roof's getting ready to collapse or something crazy. You have to know how to put chains on a truck. You have to have a truck. You have to have a truck with 4-wheel drive. And there's not jobs here. Like before work from home, like there wasn't jobs here. So you worked outside, you worked with your hands. You had to fight for your existence. And so when you live in the mountains, it makes a particular type of person. There's a struggle to it. A struggle to it. And this struggle turns you into something. It transforms you. In the sense, from having soft hands to having hard hands. Like, you know how to handle a situation. You know how to handle real life reality. Real life reality. And again, I don't want to go into a comparison about city people versus, you know, country folks, but you know, just to have some fun. Is the things in life that we really want, we're going to struggle with. We're going to fight for. But that's something different than psychological suffering. Now, the immature mind takes all suffering, all struggle personally. We take it personally. When we take something personally, it creates a sense of egoic division. Creates a sense of egoic division. But when we struggle for something that is in alignment with truth, when we struggle for a greater life, a greater connection with God, a greater connection with our heart. I can remember I asked, it was this young Christian fella who I met. Some of you might know him, Adam Bucko. Adam Bucko, he was a young fella. He was from Poland. I think he had to flee Poland as a refugee. He had like this amazing life story, and he moved to the States. He started working in spiritual centers, like Christian or Catholic spiritual centers. Then eventually, and he started teaching a little bit, but then I think he went off to become a priest. And so his kind of fell off out of public life. But anyways, I was talking with Adam one day, and I asked him a question, about the Bible and the language in the Bible. I've always had this great love for Jesus. And I'm not so good with scripture. I have a great connection with Jesus, but the scripture, because of the language of it, I've had trouble connecting with it. Frankly, I'd say, I don't know what the hell this means. And I was talking with Adam, and I said, a lot of times I don't know what the Bible means. He said, that's good. He says, it forces you to sit with it and to struggle to get to know it, to struggle to understand it. And I've been thinking here, it's like, well, if you really want to know something, you're willing to struggle with it. You're willing to fight with it. You're willing to read it again and again and again. And you'll find at different times in your life, like when I was young, I read the Bible, it had zero meaning to me. I thought, God, this is just a bunch of crazy old English speak. I have no idea what any of this means. When I'd see pictures of Jesus on the cross, I actually got angry as a kid. I thought, why are they showing all these pictures of Jesus suffering? I don't want to see Jesus suffering. I want to see Jesus working miracles. That's what I wanted to see. And I can remember I was in this church in Guatemala. There's this beautiful town in Guatemala. I should know the name of it, but I can't remember it. But it's like a little village, not even town, like a little village. I want to call it Antigua, but I don't know if that's the name or not. It's at this lake, and it's surrounded by all these volcanoes. And there's all these little villages around the lake with Mayan people. I was in a Catholic church there, and in one of these little villages, a Mayan village. When I was there, it was funny because it was like I was 7 feet tall, because everyone was 4 feet tall. I was just this giant in this town. But I can remember in the church there, in Central America and South America, often they have these mannequins with a bloody Christ in there, the crown of thorns and blood, and it just looks horrific, absolutely horrific. And I'm standing there, I can remember being in this temple, in this church, and just looking at this mannequin of Jesus. He had it's like a wig. It was terrible. It looked like a bad Halloween costume, but with the thorns and this blood makeup. And I was like, what the hell is this? This makes no sense to me. No sense to me. Now, it was probably that night, maybe it was the next night, but I found myself on my deathbed. In that lake, I think they said there was some kind of terrible amoeba floating in the lake, and I was swimming in the lake. And I got crazy sick, ridiculously sick. And, I had a fever that was something ridiculous, 104, 105. And, I was sitting in this little, hostel or hotel or something, just a cinder block hotel, and just vomiting my brains out. And I called out to Jesus, and he showed up. He showed up. He brought 2 other friends with him. I don't know who they were at the time, but just he brought these 2 other masters with him. And here I was in this bed, just vomiting like crazy, sweating like crazy, delirious. Having this tremendous experience of human physical suffering. Human physical suffering. Again, I thought I was a dead man. I was really young. I called a dead boy because I was probably 19 or 20 years old when I was there. Maybe I was 21, but I doubt that. And Jesus showed up with these two masters. And I really thought I was dead because I was like, oh, he's coming to get me. He's coming to get me. But in that moment, I began to see like the paradox of human life, the paradox of the cross, the paradox of being human and suffering greatly, and simultaneously having my heart completely and fully blown open to the divine. This was the paradox, the teaching of Jesus, of suffering greatly in human form. Suffering greatly in human form, with a heart wide open. With a heart wide open. Now, when we are in our egoic existence, when we suffer, when we struggle, when we're having a hard day, someone says something we don't like, they disagree with our politics or whatever it is, our heart shuts down and we feel ourselves as separate, isolated, and alone. We feel victimized, we feel attacked, we feel the opposite of oneness with life. We feel separate from life. We take life so personally. But on the spiritual path, it can be very helpful to have a model, to have an understanding that there are some things worth fighting for. There are good fights and there are bad fights. There are good fights and there are bad fights. There are fights that lead us to somewhere greater. And there are fights that lead us, again, into unnecessary suffering. Unnecessary suffering. The things we cling to, the things we are attached to, the things that do not serve us that we hold on to. These lead to unnecessary suffering. The things we fight for, like many of us, we fight for our own freedom, for our own liberation. What kind of fight am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about maybe we sit in meditation and we struggle with meditation. We struggle to learn to meditate. We struggle to learn to open our hearts. We struggle to learn how to forgive. We struggle to learn unconditional love. We struggle to get to know our courage and the willingness to stand in our strength. Sometimes we struggle against fear, against laziness, unconsciousness, like a part of us that's just like, oh, I'm good. I'm just going to hang out. I don't need to do anything. I'm just going to sit here and kind of space out for a while. We struggle against our own lethargy, our own laziness, our own heaviness, our own denseness. We struggle with opening. But this is a fight worth fighting for. In a sense, I'm inviting you to choose the struggle of the spiritual path. And when we choose to walk the path, We choose to do it consciously. When things come to us that are difficult, we see it as a challenge and we don't take it personally. We don't take it personally. We see very clearly that life is challenging us to evolve, to grow, to awaken, to step into that which is higher. Now, it can be very helpful on the spiritual path to have healthy models of spirituality. Now, unfortunately, many of us were given these mythological paths, this mythological model of basically it's a magic pill. Be a good Christian, one day you'll die and go to heaven. You'll be with Jesus forever. Okay, like, is that really how it works? Sit and meditate and let go of your family and your house and your belongings and be a monk. And one day you'll have a supreme experience of enlightenment and you'll never experience pain again. Is that really how it works? Like, are either of these healthy worldviews that there's this magical thing called enlightenment, which once we experience that, through just sitting and meditating and being poor and having no home and wearing monk robes and shaving our head, and one day we'll be blessed with this thing called enlightenment. We will never suffer again. It's like these models, these views are very unhelpful. They support the ego's view. The ego's view is, I need to run from pain and run towards pleasure. There's a magical land where I never feel pain again. And many of us are hoping for that place. If you look at any great master, their consciousness may live in a world of bliss and freedom, free of psychological suffering to a huge degree. I assume if they have a husband, a wife, a partner, that partner dies, they're going to grieve. They're going to feel sad. They're going to feel great hurt. They will suffer. Now, the Buddha, it was said, was poisoned. I imagined that hurt like hell, to vomit your brains out and to die from being poisoned. For Jesus, nailed to a cross, it's like there's no question that boy suffered. No question. No question. Joan of Arc, burnt on a stake. No question. Like, no question that there was suffering there. Great pain. Great pain. Great pain. So when we live here in this world, this human world, we have to accept a different teaching of the Buddha, which is there's going to be sickness, there'll be old age, there'll be death, there'll be pain, there'll be difficulty in this world. The path can be long and hard and confusing, difficult, messy. It can wind one direction and another direction. It can take you into realms where sometimes God takes you and drops you off in the void for 6 days or 6 months or 6 years. Sometimes we have these crazy, wild, confusing kundalini awakenings. And it completely overwhelms our body and our nervous system. We suffer greatly. we struggle with the energy. But if we struggle in a way where we are choosing to continually open, that path is going to lead us somewhere. If we suffer in a way where we fight against God and say, God, you shouldn't be doing this to me. I don't like what you're doing. I don't believe in you. I don't believe in your intelligence. I don't believe in your way. I don't believe in your will. I believe in my will, my egoic will. My egoic will says I shouldn't feel pain ever. It's not fair to feel pain. And we're going to suffer greatly. We're going to suffer greatly. And this is an unnecessary suffering because we prolong the struggle due to our psychological attachment to our egoic beliefs. Now, what can be incredibly helpful on the spiritual path is if we have a very clear model. That's why it's helpful to have a teacher. A teacher can provide a very clear model. Teacher can pat you on the back, say, hey, keep going forward. I believe in you. I have faith in your divinity. You're doing great. You're not doing anything wrong. Keep going forward. Keep going forward. Keep opening. Don't give up. Don't lose faith. And so it could be helpful on the path to have clear models. Clear models of what true spiritual awakening, what a true spiritual path looks like. And again, so many of us, like we get excited about the next latest thing. Like the new one, which is an old one, but it's new to most people in the Western culture, is I'm going to do ayahuasca and it's going to heal all my trauma. It's going to make me instantly awake. And, it's going to, I'm going to make a YouTube channel or whatever it is. And you'll see if you Google people's ayahuasca experiences, they go to the jungle and they come back. Maybe they go to Atlanta, and sit in an Airbnb in Atlanta, drink some of the magic juice. It's a huge experience. They write a blog, make a YouTube video about their experience of enlightenment. And you're like, that's it. That's the thing I want. Now, if you follow up with that person in 6 months or 2 years or something, you'll see. Sorry, I think that's my wife's phone going off, but you'll see that the awakening didn't stick. The enlightenment didn't stick. The big experience did not stick. Did not stick. Maybe it was semi-transformative. Maybe it did something that was deeply helpful. Maybe it gave them some great insight. But ultimately, any true path is going to require some level of suffering, some level of struggle. Now, again, when we study a path, when we give our life to a path, when we're willing to struggle with the path, when we have clear models, such as the model of the Enneagram, the model of trauma and trauma healing, the model of psychology and psychotherapy, the model of how to work with the shadow, it brings a great deal of clarity to us when we have good, healthy models. And a true path will be able to support you wherever you're at and whatever it is that you're struggling with. The true path will be comprehensive, is what I'm saying. It will be inclusive. It will be radically inclusive. Now, most of us have tried paths, say, for example, like in the world of non-duality, like the direct path. In the direct path, we don't deal with suffering. We don't deal with trauma. We just try to wake up in the here and now. We ignore our humanity. Again, like sometimes it works temporarily. It brings forth states of awakened vision or some kind of transcendent awakened experience. But what many people have found on direct paths is they find, God, this is not enough. And some people, when they study Zen, they realize, gee, Zen is great. It's taught me how to be a good meditator, make my mind really clear. But there's no heart here. There's no love here. And I don't know what to do with my psychology. I don't know what to do with all this kundalini energy. I don't know how to relate to my children. Zen doesn't talk about parenting, doesn't talk about being patient with kids. Doesn't talk about having a career. A lot of these paths are paths for monks. Paths for monks. And so when we struggle with our psychological nature, when we struggle with our personal sense of self and our personal egoic nature, it could be helpful to have a model for how to work with your particular ego in a way that helps to empty the ego, heal the ego, soften the ego, shed some light on it, shed some light on its games, its dances, its programming. Again, like when you study the Enneagram, you find your particular type, you're like, oh my God, this program is running in this consciousness. And when I see it clearly, I can see it in an impersonal way. And that creates a sense of freedom, and I can smile at it, and I can have some space with it. And when you study, say, for example, trauma healing, and your trauma comes forward, and you learn to work with your trauma with love, with compassion, with mindfulness, with sweetness, with an embrace, the sense of validation for what you've been through. And it helps to heal it and clear it out, empty it out of you. And then you deepen in a greater sense of compassion and love. When you study, for example, Christianity, and you look at this image of this man on a cross, this great spiritual master on a cross. And you're walking down the road and you're doing really good things in the world, and you're a healer and you're being kind to yourself and you're sharing love and light in the world. And you find yourself publicly humiliated, belittled. When you find yourself stripped, in one way or another of your dignity, when you get beat down by life. Then you have this vision of the Christ, of Jesus on the cross. You don't take it so personally. You see it that, oh, this great master went through this. So this is my cross. And I'm open to the cross. I'm open to suffering. I'm open to learning from this. And I know after being hung on the cross, there comes the resurrection. The resurrection. When you study the life of the Buddha, you see he didn't just sit under a tree and have a magical experience of awakening. You see that boy suffered and he struggled and he fought and he got confused and he was weary and he went one way and the other, and life pushed him this way and that way. And finally, life brought him to this one point, this one moment. And he sat down and he made this great choice. I'm going to sit here and not get up until I'm awake. And when we study the life of the Buddha, we see from that moment on, he was challenged greatly, greatly. Mara threw everything at him. Everything at him. The same way with Jesus in the desert. The devil threw everything at Jesus. Mara and the devil, just being the unconscious, throws everything at us. See, sometimes we have a model of spiritual awakening that looks like we sit down and meditate. We say, Om. It's like a wonderful yoga retreat. We're going to do a little yoga. We're going to sit in silence. We're going to go get some Starbucks or some kind of silly thing. It's not how it works. You sit down to meditate and your unconscious comes forward, just like it did with Jesus in the desert, just like it did with Buddha under the Bodhi tree. We are challenged. We're challenged. We're challenged. And then let's have a little bit of fun here. If you study astrology, you might see that, like you might have 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, a relatively no challenge where things just fall into place. Whether you're doing things right or doing things wrong, things fall into place. And then, because something happens in the universe and the stars, for the next 5 years after that, you have nothing but constant challenge. And again, when we have clear models, when we learn how to read astrology, when we know the Enneagram, when we can see, this is how my egoic conditioning operates. It's how my partner's conditioning operates. It's how my children's conditioning operates. It's how my boss's conditioning operates. We take it less seriously, less personally. And it's much easier to let go. It's much easier to forgive. Much easier to surrender. It's a lot easier to laugh and have a lightheartedness. It's easier to see the matrix, the illusion of life. The illusion, which is really the confusion of life that everyone trips over. So it could be helpful to have models. But when we are on our own, and we don't have a teacher, we don't have a sangha, we don't have community, or we don't have a mature view of the path, when all we have is an egoic mind that's hardwired to think about magic pills and worlds where one day we'll be rich and everyone will love us and we'll never experience pain again. And life is supposed to be free of suffering. These types of views, like this egoic view, is a very immature view. Incredibly immature view. It's not rooted in reality. It's rooted in what the Buddha called hope. Not good Christian hope, but hope in illusion. Hope in illusion. Now, one day we'll get to a place where we never experience pain again. And I'm here to give you some bad news. As long as we have a body, there's going to be the possibility, potentiality of some level of pain. All of us, even if we're in great health, we tend to get sick at least every couple of years. Our friends and our family will die, and things can be hard. So it's good to ask ourselves these questions. Am I willing to suffer? Am I willing to struggle? Any great athlete knows this. If I want to be great, I practice, I struggle. I lift weight, I hit the gym, I jump in the pool, even when it's cold. I ride my bike, I climb the mountain, I do whatever it is. And it's a good struggle. When I struggle in this way, I'm growing, I'm becoming stronger, more powerful. My mind becomes clearer, sharper. There's a sense of dedication. My life has meaning and purpose. Instead of this thought that life should be pain-free, now I'm going to ask you all to close your eyes now to ask, for what purpose am I willing to suffer? What purpose am I willing to struggle? What greater purpose? What is it that you actually want? What are you willing to give your life to? What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to give up? What good fight have you chosen to pick up? These are the things that provide us meaning. What does my life stand for? What is my life actually about? Is my life a movement of ego that's just wanting to be free of pain? Or am I willing to suffer for the right reasons? Am I willing to struggle for the right reasons? Am I willing to stand in the truth and shine my light into this world? Whether it feels good or feels bad, whether people receive me or reject me. Am I willing to stand in the truth, fight for the truth, walk in the direction of the truth? Or do I want to just stay home in my warm, cozy bed? In my warm, cozy bed. Nothing wrong with a warm, cozy bed. But at some point, if we never get out of our bed, our life has no meaning, no deeper meaning, no deeper meaning. For what am I willing to give my life to? I've had a lot of people come to me and tell me, I said, what do you want? They said, Craig, I want the truth. I want the truth. But are you willing to dedicate your life to the truth? You know, some people come and they say, I want to heal. Well, are you willing to dedicate your life to healing? To healing. I've met a number of people who have told me they want to heal, but their life is dedicated to video games. It's like, my God, video games. Video games, come on. Come on, how much do you love yourself? Do you want to heal? Are you doing the things to help you heal? Now, a lot of times, healing and spiritual awakening is about you getting your power back from the things you're addicted to, getting your power back from the past, getting your power back from the voice of despair or hopelessness. Can you get your power back? Can you take your power back? Now, sometimes that means we need to forgive the past and the people who hurt us. Sometimes it means we need to forgive ourselves. You can't live in the truth and hate yourself and judge yourself. At the same time, it does not work. To live in the truth, to heal, you might have to forgive yourself. You might have to forgive the past. You might have to stand up to addiction and say no. You might have to learn to be kind to yourself or to others. You might have to learn that you are worthy. So go, how do I learn that I'm worthy? Like, what does that mean? I mean, you sitting with yourself, sitting with all the feelings of unworthiness and holding that one while they cry. You let them know, I see you and I love you and I care. And if you've told yourself you're unworthy 10 million and one times, if it was your father, your mother told you, trained you that you're unworthy 10 million times, you might have to, tell yourself, show yourself 10 million and one times that you are worthy. Life has told me I'm unworthy, but I'm going to show myself I am worthy. This is how we follow the truth. This is how we stand in the truth. Very hard to be awake, to be enlightened, to be free, if we believe we're unworthy. Very hard to know love if we put ourselves last. It's very hard to heal if we don't believe in healing. We don't believe in healing. Some people come to me and say, healing's not possible for me. What the hell are you doing here? I'm going to tell you the opposite. Healing is possible. It's absolutely possible for you. But it's a funny thing to say, to come to a healer and say, I feel like it's impossible for me to heal. Sometimes people want to try to come and convince me that it's impossible for them to heal. Like, oh, you're going to make this very hard experience for yourself and for this person who believes in you, who believes in healing, who believes in healing, who believes in the truth. Hard to be awake if you believe in untruths and falsehood. This is a great question. What are you willing to fight for? What are you willing to struggle against? What are you willing to let go of in the name of the truth? And so often it's, I need to let go of 90% of my beliefs. Like, I have all these negative beliefs inside. And I need to let go of them. Like, many of us have this belief that the world is here to reject us. It's like, my God, we're having a hard time waking up and a hard time healing. This is a belief that we're holding on to. Are we willing to surrender that? That this world is a divine world. And this divine world may challenge us. Maybe some struggles. But ultimately, this is God's world. And I know I'm a child of God. And therefore, I know I'm meant to be here at this moment in history. And God is challenging me to open my heart. The path becomes much easier when we believe that God is here to help us open our heart, through challenging us to love more deeply and fully, to stand in the truth, to stand in our power. And if we think God has abandoned me here on planet Earth, left me for dead, I have to fight for my seat at the table. And I have to fight through manipulation, or through having more power, or money, or status, or having a fancy car, or whatever it is. If we follow this way, we're going to lead ourselves deeper and deeper into realms of darkness. So anyways, what am I willing to struggle for? What am I willing to give up? What am I willing to fight for? Okay, let's hear from Chrissy. Chrissy, are you here?
I am. Hi, Craig.
Are you here?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, there you are.
Oh, hiya. Last time we met, you spoke about playing the oneness game and playing the freedom game. Would you mind summarizing them both for me, please?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I remember what context we were talking about here. The oneness game and the freedom game. So if we look at, like, if we, roll with this idea of having an appropriate model for the world. So every great spiritual master speaks about oneness. Oneness, that all is God. All is the fabric of God. All is made of God. Everything that happens is God. Everything is the will of God. That you and I are one. Now, we may be one in essence, in divinity, but at the same time, we may be individuals. Now, that doesn't make us separate. Just like there's, if you look out the ocean, there's all these waves. Same ocean. There's different waves. Now, if one wave looks at the other wave and says, I'm separate, I am different, and I need to defend and guard myself, me against you, then we create this great illusion of suffering. It's me against you. I need to fight for my place here. But when we see that all of us here on planet Earth, all of life, through the law of oneness, is on the same team, it's the same movement. If I hurt you, I'm hurting myself. If I judge my neighbor, I'm judging myself. If I have envy or jealousy towards you or the neighbor, if I desire, something outside of myself, again, I'm missing the law of oneness. Like when I walk outside and I look out at the mountains, I see my own self. I see my hugeness, my majesty. And what is myself? Myself is God's self. I look at the beauty of nature and I see the beauty of Craig. I look at the beauty of nature and I see the beauty of God. And so I don't look at my neighbors with fear. I look at them and I see their beauty. I see their divinity. I see their hearts. I see their goodness. And if my neighbors fall on their face and make a mistake, again, I see that as my own self too. I'm like, oh yeah, I make those same mistakes too. I see that my mind and my neighbor's mind, like my human mind, and my neighbor's human mind, it's the same mind, it's the same dances in it. Same hopes, same fears, same greediness, same attachment, same whatever striving, same hunger. And when I look at my Buddha mind, and I look at my neighbor's Buddha mind, I say, oh yeah, same mind. Same mind. Same mind. When we give ourselves permission to live beyond egoic identification, we experience this directly. This is not a philosophy. Again, I walk outside in the hugeness of the mountain, the hugeness of the sky, the beauty and the purity of the snow is my beauty and purity. The beauty and purity of all life. Your beauty and purity. It's the beauty and purity of Anne Frank. It's the beauty and purity of Mahatma Gandhi. It's one beauty and purity, and it's flowing through in and throughout all of life. So in the law of oneness, when we look out at the world through the lens of the open heart, we experience oneness. We experience ourselves directly. Like whenever I'm meeting with anyone, I just feel like I'm just talking to myself, talking to myself. I feel like my teacher is talking to me. God is talking to me. I'm talking to myself. It's like where I end and the other begins. Again, it's like that ocean. It's all one. It's all one. So was there a second part to the question? It was what was it? The law of oneness. What was the other one?
Yeah, the freedom game. I'm a bit clearer on the freedom game. Can you kind of conceptualize your way to oneness, or is it an experience of the heart? Like when the heart opens, does it naturally, is it more and more your experience?
Yeah, so with oneness, I'm going to talk a little bit about fearlessness. So many of us have a beautiful experience of the heart opening. When the heart really opens, like we're just living and breathing oneness, and we feel it. It feels like a radical intimacy in us, as us, that we are one with all of life. It's completely undivided. Undivided. Now, for this oneness to take root, we have to face all our fears, because normally with people, when their heart opens, it's a temporary thing. But the heart will stay open through the power of choice and the power of fearlessness. That's the willing to feel everything without shutting down. So hardwired into our ego, like I was speaking about before, is this thought that goes something like, if it feels bad, I need to close and I need to guard, I need to defend. If it feels bad, I don't like it, I need to distance myself from that thing. Buddha nature, Christ-like nature, says whether it feels good or it feels bad, I am open to it. I am open to it. This is what freedom is. Freedom is I'm open to everything. And this is what true oneness is. True oneness is I am open to everything. I am open to everything. I don't shut down. I don't close, whether something feels good or whether it feels bad. I'm open. I'm open. So I see a couple of people just fell into the room here. We had a time change in the US. We started an hour ago. So keep that in mind for next week. But again, many of us, our hearts, like we might be on retreat, we might have a wonderful experience in nature, where our hearts just open up and it's wonderful and it's glorious. But for those hearts to stay open, for oneness to become a permanent experience, for freedom to become a way of life, we have to be courageous enough to open up and to never shut down. And what that looks like, just like in a real basic human way, is it means we're willing to feel everything. We're willing to feel and experience everything. We don't shut down. We do not contract. We do not contract. And when we first do this, it is awful and terrible. It's like, oh my God, I feel everything. Everything. And it hurts. Like I could feel the pain and the fear of my neighbors. I can feel my parents' judgment of me. I can feel my boss, let's have some fun here, creeping on me. I feel, jealousy and anger and rage and resentment. I feel the suffering You know, the people working in cobalt mines in the Congo. I feel the suffering of the mother, you know, carrying a child on her back at 4 a.m. while she's walking to a mine. You know, to dig out, you know, little bits of something for someone's smartphone in America. I feel that pain. And for most of us, when we feel that pain, it is heart-wrenching. And what we want to do is we want to shut down and we want to distract. But the awakened one does something different. They open and they open and they open and they open. And they cry and they grieve and they shake and they tremble and they cry and they grieve and they shake and they tremble. And they let it all burn and empty until there is only openness. Until there is only openness. And when we open fully and completely with all of our experience, there's a shift that begins to happen when our experience goes from being like emotional and it's hard and it's dense, it's like, oh my God, to, oh my God, like all of life is made of spaciousness, is made of light, is made of intelligence. All of life. Hell is made of spaciousness, light, and intelligence. Despair is made of spaciousness, light, and intelligence. Physical pain is made of spaciousness, light, and intelligence. When you really sit with anything, sit with bliss, it's very easy. It's like, what is bliss made of? Spaciousness, light, and intelligence. Satchidananda. Hell, trauma. What is trauma made of? Like when we really sit with trauma, become deeply intimate with this thing called trauma. As it moves through our bodies, it begins to unravel. We open to it. We see this thing that I've been so afraid of is made of space. It's made of light. It's made of intelligence. Intelligence. If you sit with anything long enough, we see that all of life is made of the same fabric. And as we begin to realize this, as we begin to know it, as we begin to experience it, it's very hard for there to be divisions based on what I like and what I don't like. This whole egoic perception of I am here, you are there. This is my suffering, that's your suffering, this is my life, that's your life. It's me against you. When we open, we just become openness. We become the fabric. We realize that the fabric is everything, and that fabric is Satchidananda. It's everywhere in everything. It's the substance of all of life. Our consciousness, your consciousness, God's consciousness, consciousness of hell, the consciousness of heaven is made of this one fabric. And through that realization, through that experience, again, there just becomes no reason to close, no reason to shut down. We see that the energy of rejection is made of the same thing as the energy of love. Rejection is made of God, love is made of God. It's all God. It's all love. It's all space. It's all light. There's this thing that happens in our egoic consciousness where it all starts to crumble. And instead of having an egoic consciousness and seeing the world through this filter of egoic consciousness, we see the world through the filter of Satchidananda. We experience that directly in heaven and in hell. In heaven and in hell. Now, this is that thing that the Buddha was talking about, where this freedom from suffering. And then just to make it fun and paradoxical and more complex. This total non-dual realization also includes the fact that there is a body here, there is an individual here, and that thing may cry and grieve and trip and hurt and wince, if you stub your toe. If you stub your toe. But there's no resistance to it. Even if there is resistance to it, because that's included too. And so anyways, I hope there was something helpful there for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Much love. Yeah. And so what are we willing to struggle for? And so one of the things that I see, in a deep bow of respect to the Europeans in the room, like here are some folks who are getting up in the middle of the night to show up, to receive these teachings, to struggle against sleep or sleeplessness, to be here, to be here. That's a good struggle. If we listen to our egoic nature, be like, I'll just listen to it on YouTube the next day, next week, whenever he uploads it. And for me, it's like with my teacher, it was, I gave up every Wednesday night. I gave up every Sunday morning. And our classes were 3 hours long, sometimes 4 hours long. My teacher would go on and on. And then they'd be followed by Sunday. It was a whole day of work on the land for the teacher, just a whole day of service after that. And then if you were me, you were already there 5 days a week. And so it's like you're there 6 days a week. And it's like, it's a lot of giving to the path. But again, I wanted to know the truth. And so I was willing to struggle. I was willing to be poor, work for $8 an hour. I was willing to give my life to something that ultimately paid off in consciousness. So anyways, okay. Getting a little late in the evening, but let's hear from Don. Are you here, Don?
Thank you, Craig. Thank you. You've just described extraordinarily clearly what I'm about to share. Just two pretty brief moments. They're just so much talking about. I mentioned before that often I get up around 4:30 to feed the cats, and I usually get back and wait about 2 hours to get up and meditate. But a couple mornings ago, the energy from the retreat was still really intense. So I sat to meditate. I just felt, I've mentioned this before, this dissolving, just flowing into everything. And at some point, as I was really starting to feel myself getting lost, this intense thought came up, I'm not going to be able to talk to Jan the same way if I let go into this.
Yeah.
So I kind of hung out with this. And this one wasn't as intense as the next one, but this one, the first I thought of our conversations that day, the first thing that came to mind was we'd had this intense argument about the meaning of some business term. And I'm thinking how the mind wants to cling to suffering. It's like, let's see, supreme unparalleled enlightenment, arguing with Jan, that's a tough decision, So I'm sort of looking at that one. But the next one was much more intense. So I get up at 4:30, it was about yesterday morning, I think. And I get back to bed. And I'd had this conversation, a Zoom talk with a friend. I talk with him every week. And I don't want to give any details about the person, but just he'd said something which triggered probably the deepest, rawest, like seriously, the feeling I had was, I actually thought of the group because we've been on retreat. I thought, yeah, everyone else thinks they're unworthy, but I'm really unredeemably, I'm not saying I believe this in my mind, but I felt in my gut, Craig is wrong. I am just irredeemable. I'm this most horrible, narcissistic, unempathic, horrible person imaginable. So as I stayed with that, I felt myself start to drift off into sort of spaciousness. And I said, something in me said, no, don't do that. Don't escape from it. And I felt then it was so core. I felt like when I went back to it, I started to believe it again. It's like, no, this is, I know this is not true, but it feels so real.
Yeah.
So I sat there, this is it. I sat there in such pain, going back and forth to like, a taste of freedom, start to get, and this went on for a long, I'm really getting lost in going through my whole life, thinking of everyone must have really hated me. I mean, everyone in my life has just fooled me into thinking I cared, and just total. Anyway, I don't want to go on anymore. Just, it was amazing the way you described this going back and forth.
Yeah.
Freedom. Yeah, just like, and to conclude, I have a Zoom session with this friend tomorrow, and I'm sort of committed to it, but like there's sort of terror and willingness. So it's really interesting to hear you speak of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, my question to you is that part of you that feels unworthy, instead of believing in the story of it, and, he might have a whole list of reasons why he is unworthy. If you asked instead, what do you think he needs from you?
What do I think the unworthiness in Don needs? Or my friend?
Yeah, the unworthiness
Okay.
that you feel. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It not only needs love, it needs to be just like enveloped and embraced and
Exactly.
made safe. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
can we hold him? Can we love him? Can we be with him? We hold him. Can we love him? Can we be with him? And sometimes these parts of ourselves, they'll go on again. No, you don't understand. I really am unworthy. I'm rotten, no good.
Right.
And I'm a rotten banana peel. My heart is 2 sizes too small.
Right.
It's very important that we don't listen to that, but instead we respond, with a deep, full breath and a gentle mantra, something like, I see you and I love you and I care. And sometimes we have to say this, we breathe into that pain 10,000 times. I see you and I love you and I care. And it's through the act of staying with the unworthiness that the thing becomes worthy. The thing realizes it's worthy. It's like, oh my God, like someone stayed here with me for 10,000 breaths. If I was unworthy, he would have left. He would have went up into that spaciousness. And that would be spiritual bypassing. And that's a real common thing. It's something I did for the first decade of the path, is I just kept trying to bypass my unworthiness. And I realized, oh, that doesn't work. It doesn't work to bypass it. It's still there. And so if we look at any child on planet Earth, the child heals. The child grows up through us, in a sense, being with them, holding their hand, nourishing them, nurturing them, seeing them, loving them, supporting them, believing in them, having faith in them. Yeah, much love, Tom. Much love. Okay. Let's see here. We'll hear from Johan. Johan, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. I just want to talk about something that's been bothering me a lot for the last weeks. I've been feeling really stressed at work, and mostly is afraid of making mistakes or of doing something wrong and
What
not
do you
being
do? What do
fast
you do
enough.
for work?
I'm doing carpentry.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Are you doing framing or interior work or what?
Well, right now I'm doing a job that I don't like. I'm doing a renovation, but it will be over soon. Yeah, and it brings up a lot of questioning. I'm like, oh, is this the right thing for me? Maybe I'm not meant to do that, blah blah
Well,
blah.
let's look at this real quick. So, is being a carpenter your highest truth? Don't think too hard about this. I want a quick answer. Is being a carpenter your highest truth?
No.
No, no. So anytime you do a job that's not your highest truth, like if you have a career or vocation that's not your highest truth, you're going to have some level of dissatisfaction and some level of doubt, some level of stress, some level of feeling like, God, this isn't the right thing for me. It's not your ultimate truth. And so your ego is going to resist it. And in a sense, I hate to say it, but like, we're not going to be the best worker. We're not going to be the best worker. Our heart's not going to be in it. Like when I first became a carpenter, I was all into it. I was super excited about it. I'd read books in it. This is before like YouTube. So I'd like read books about framing. I hired my friends to work with me and alongside of me to teach me like all the tricks of the trade. And I got really into it. It's like, I loved it. I love like the thrill of building something and like the feeling of success at the end of the day. But after a short period of time, like that kind of newness and excitement burned off. And there's just a sense of like, okay, whatever. I know how to build something, but like this isn't my truth. And then it just became like this stressful thing. And I wasn't excited about it. It became a job that I don't want to say hated, but it just became like, gosh.
What if what I'm doing as a carpenter right now is not my truth? And what if another thing related to building would be my truth? Is that possible also? Because
oh yeah, well, tell me what that is.
I love small, very small like houses, like tiny houses or small cabins.
Mm-hmm.
And actually the company I work for is advertised as a tiny house company, but we haven't built any tiny houses.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing other things right now.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'm thinking maybe I'm going to talk to my boss tomorrow and ask him to put me on a smaller houses projects. But yeah, I've been confused, like, is this my path, or is this other thing my path? Like I've been,
So what do you mean? Is this my path or is the other thing my path?
well, actually there's many things coming up. Like I've been thinking about music a lot, because I don't want to brag or anything, but I'm very talented in guitar, I think. But I don't know if that's the truth, because sometimes I feel like it's a bit forced, but sometimes I feel like it's so beautiful and it wants to share and come.
So I'm gonna reorient you, Johan, to the teaching. Which one of these are you willing to struggle with and to give your life to? Like if we have a dead end job, it's not really going anywhere. It's like, God,
Is it possible to do both at the same time? Like, does it need to be one or the other? Like, because I feel pressured. Like, I want to do both.
I want to do both.
Yeah, I want to do more than one
and
thing.
the tiny home.
Yeah, I love building stuff. I love playing guitar. I love creating.
So if
I love
you
photography, I love many things, but I don't know.
Beautiful. So if you tell me I love building stuff, it sounded like you were complaining a lot in the beginning about your work.
I love building stuff. I don't know why I feel so afraid of making mistakes at work.
Okay, so now we're circling back to something different. I love building, but there's a fear within me where I'm going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're going to make lots of mistakes when you build. You're going to make lots of mistakes, like on a hammer, there's one end that you beat the nail and the other end is a claw. The claw is for mistakes. So like in your primary tool, the claw, is for mistakes. It's like one end is knock the nail in and the other half of the tool is for the mistakes you make. And I assume in addition to the claw and the hammer, you have a nail puller. Again, that's for mistakes. You have a sawzall?
Yeah, we've got one at work.
Yeah. So a sawzall is often used for mistakes. It's like, damn, I got to get the sawzall out and I got to cut these boards apart and we got to redo this. Sawzall is made for cutting through nails, and it's, boards and nails. It's a tool that's made for when we make mistakes. And so like, this is part of life. This is part of building. It's part of building. And so here's a level of psychological suffering where you're not allowing yourself to make mistakes. And you're not allowing life to make mistakes. Now, like I used to run a crew of guys, and we'd build a wall, and then like the homeowner or the wife or whoever it was would come in the room. I sometimes it'd be my teacher would come in the room. He'd say, we'd snap the line. He'd say, build the wall here, Craig. I'd build the wall there. He'd be like, no, that's too tight. Let's take that wall down. Let's move it over 3 inches. And sometimes I'd have guys that would lose their mind if we had to move a wall 3 inches. And for me, it's just like, whatever. Just like man says, move the wall 3 inches. We're going to move it 3 inches. Like, no big deal. They call it a mistake. We call it a waste of time. We call it life. But if we go with the flow, it's no big deal. It's just part of the project. Part of the project. And so, but if you try to live in a way where you're not allowed to make mistakes, that's opposite of being human. Like you're going to make countless mistakes, and other people are going to make mistakes, and you'll be blamed for them. And sometimes the homeowner makes mistakes, the client or whoever it is, or the architect or the engineer. Like I've been on the receiving end of everyone's mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes on the job. And at some point, it's often the carpenter who cleans them up, who fixes them. And so if you're comfortable with that, like when you live long enough, like mistakes are a part of life, are part of life. And so what is it within you that's resisting making mistakes? Are we afraid the boss is going to yell at you, or is you afraid you're going to be fired? What's the fear here?
When I started this job a couple of months ago, definitely this was a big fear, is disappointing my boss, and then he might fire me, like my colleagues being disappointed and kind of rejecting me.
Yeah.
And right now it's the homeowner. She's often there when I'm working, and she's stressed about money, you can tell. And she's like asking me like, so this should take only like 2 hours, right? And I'm like, I'm not sure, like, and I feel like I rush myself because I want her
twice as long.
Right.
Twice as much money. How much is this going to cost? Twice as long. And how much is it going to cost? Twice as much money as you think, and twice as long. It's like, I've worked with old builders before, and they say, okay, I'm going to do all the math here, figure out how much this thing's going to cost. I'm going to do the math in my head, how many days it's going to take us. I'm going to multiply both by 2. Both by 2. At the end of my my contracting career, I figured out that's the equation. Don't you dare let that lady tell you how long it's going to take. She's watching HGTV, and they got 2 guys and then a bunch of camera people showing how quick it goes. And really, they turn off the cameras, and they got 6 other guys come in and hurry up and get the job done and turn the cameras back on. Like, oh, look how quick! Look what we did in a Saturday afternoon. It's like, I don't know. This is life. This is life. Any remodel, twice as long, twice as much money. And the beautiful thing about a homeowner is they will keep asking for changes and additions. And then they'll ask you, why is it taking so long? And why does it cost so much money? Like, I painted a kitchen for a couple once 5 times. 5 times. Same kitchen. It's like, y'all are crazy. Y'all are crazy. And the husband, he had the audacity, why does it cost so much? It's like, man, you keep changing the color. It's like, you keep changing the color. What's, like, what reality do you live in? But people get an idea in their head of a time and a number, and they're attached to it. And then they have this idea that contractors are ripping them off or something. It's like, people have ideas. We have ideas. Reality will show us. This will take as long as it's going to take. As long as it's going to take. My teacher played this game with me once. He got really mad at me. He wanted me to make all these custom cabinets for a retreat building. He said, Craig, this is taking way too long, costing way too much money. What's the problem? What are you guys doing there? And he said, I'm going to come over. We're all going to work together, and I'm going to see what the problem is. And at the end of the day, he saw reality. He saw, oh my God, this is incredibly complicated. This takes a really long time. You guys are doing just fine. It's like, you're doing just fine. But if we have an internal judge and a critic that's fighting with reality, projecting a timetable onto reality, that is opposite of what reality is, we're going to suffer. We're going to suffer. And so at some point, you can use reality as a carpenter to show you, how long is this going to take? It's going to take however long it takes. Your job is to show up, to move your body, move the lumber, do your best. But you can do that in a deeply relaxed way, an open-hearted way, in a chill way, or you can do it in a completely stressed out way. And that choice is up to you. And you're going to find, Johan, this is going to be true for you in every aspect of your life. We can fight with reality, about some perceived idea in our head of how things should be. Or, if I ask you a question, do you believe, like do you do good work? Like, do you show up and do the best job you can?
I do the best I can. Yeah. I do feel, however, that when I'm stressed out, I kind of, I feel like I'm not doing the best I can because I rush, and I don't want to rush.
What happened? Tell me what happens as a carpenter when you rush.
You fuck things up.
You fuck things up, right? You start to get inchitis. You get inchitis. And you guys use it. You're up in Canada, right?
Yeah.
What do you use up? Do you use inches up there? Or do you use?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, inches. Okay, good. Yeah. So when you rush, you get inchitis. So you cut it an inch short is what you do, or an inch long. You measure on the wrong side of the tape. It's just like you screw things up. And so what I'm asking you, what life is inviting for you, is to have faith in yourself, to have faith in your work, to have faith that you're a good man, you're doing the best of your ability. Can you have faith in that? So not having faith in your mind and its ideas of how things should be, and not having faith in the homeowner's mind and their reality, not getting involved with their projection. You stay in your truth. your truth. I'm a good guy. I'm doing good work, showing up, doing the best of my ability. Okay, now if you're hanging out, smoking weed on your phone the whole time, hanging out on Instagram, screwing around, the boss isn't there, you're not working, it's like, hey man, get to work. But you're not doing that. You're not doing that. You're on the job, you're moving the lumber, you're cutting the boards, you're cutting the sheetrock, you're doing your thing. And can you have faith in that? Can you have faith in the truth? Faith in the truth. This is the way, my friend, to have faith in yourself. We can have faith in ourselves or faith in doubt, faith in fear, faith in rejection, faith in our projections of what everyone's thinking about us and all that kind of thing. I mean, your boss might be quite happy just to have some guys on the job. Might be quite happy. Or your boss may be quite angry and grumpy because the homeowner is giving him a hard time. But again, none of that is your job to worry about. Your job is to stay in the truth. I show up and I do good work. Whether I'm building a house, whether I'm doing a remodel, building a tiny house, or playing guitar. Playing guitar. Now, the one thing I can tell you is when you're in a job that's close to the thing you love, but not the exact thing, like if you're doing a remodel and you wish you were making a tiny home, one thing that we can say is like when you do remodel work, you learn all the skills of building. And so you can remind yourself, what am I doing? I'm sharpening my sword. And then one day, I'll use, this knowledge I've gained to make tiny homes. Maybe not today, but one day. So it's still work in the same kind of field. And so sometimes we have to remind our ego that this is part of that struggle of life is, what am I doing? I'm walking in the direction of truth. I may not be, fully making tiny homes right now, but at least I'm in the world of carpentry. So that's close. And eventually we'll get there. We'll get there. So anyways, good to be with you, Johan.
Thanks, Craig.
Yeah, much so. Okay. Good to see y'all. I'll remind everyone, the next retreat I've scheduled is a Kripalu retreat, July 16th through the 21st, I believe. Check those dates on the Kripalu website. It's an in-person retreat, 5-day retreat. It'll be very powerful, an opportunity to go incredibly deep. And so I encourage you to sign up for that if you can, if you'd like to join in that type of way. It'll be a wonderful time. And again, I'll probably have another retreat, another online retreat sometime March, April, into April, May, something like that. Somewhere in that arena, somewhere in that area. So much love to all of you, a deep bow of respect. May God's grace bless you and fill your hearts with the highest love, light, and truth going forward. See y'all soon. Okay.